AI with the Chancellor's office here in Sacramento. First and foremost, I do want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their busy schedules to attend the webinar today. I know everybody's very busy. We're right in the middle of the semester with school and things are going very fast. And of course, you know, the synchronous learning environment that we're in doesn't quite help everything as well too. So I do want to thank you all for taking the time today. It's extremely important topic that we all continue to struggle with on a day-to-day basis, some more than others. It's a battle that we have to keep going, fighting. And again, I do want to thank you all for being here. I won't take too much of the time up because I know we only have an hour, but the webinar today is really about an overview of what, how to handle ransomware and some of the problems that we encounter on a day-to-day basis. And so the team will go through the process. We have a special guest as well too, to basically run through what they experienced as it pertains to a situation that they had encountered. But I do want to thank the team at the Tech Center, Amir Khan and Tim Calhoun, my staff here within the Chancellor's office, Stephen Heath, and all the folks that got together to help put this webinar together. Again, I think this is an important topic that we continue to struggle with throughout the system. It's evident based on the things that do happen. And so I think today is just helping to provide some insight and guidance on where and what you can do with some of the tools that you have in light of the budget constraints that we all experience. So we just wanted to get together to kind of provide this overview of what's been happening and what we can do to help mitigate and share some insight from our perspective as well too. So on that note, I'll turn it over to Stephen Heath, who's part of my team at the Chancellor's office, and he'll take it from there, and then we'll dig right into this. Again, thank you all for being here.
Perfect. Thank you, Barney. And I appreciate the opportunity to get a chance to talk to all of you as well. So today, one of the things that I wanted to touch on as we start this conversation around ransomware is to really talk about the economy around ransomware and how this is honestly one of the largest growing economies that you pretty much will ever see. I'm going to chart this off just to give you a good idea. This is basically the GDP of all countries that we've got here, starting out at the United States at $21 trillion, working its way all the way down through the list. If you were to take cybercrime and you were to chart it as though it was an economy all its own, you would end up with the 13th largest economy in the world. So as you can see, things are growing. This is a huge business that we're dealing with on the other side. And so I want to leave you guys with that impression as we're going through this of that we're really on the other end, we're dealing with business people. We're dealing with that kind of a criminal element now. It's a little bit different than before. For instance, just to show you kind of the area where ransomware is growing, this is in 2018, it only made up $1 billion of that 1.5 trillion that we're seeing of cybercrime. I mean, that's less than what, 0.1% that you saw of the overall picture. That's changed. At that time, the average ransomware demand was under 10 grand. It was pretty flat and straightforward. As you fast forward a year from there, you can see it's jumping all the way up. We're getting around $80,000 is your average ransomware demand that you're seeing from these criminals. In fact, this in 2019, we saw a 950% increase. So 9.5 billion there. Now, let me give you the snapshot of what's happened in the first 2 quarters of 2020. There you go. We're all the way up to where we're at $175,000, $180,000 the average ransomware demand. This is only going to continue to grow. And it's estimated that cybercrime may be the 3rd largest economy in the world by 2021. It is booming in a way that we've never really seen before. And this is going to continue to become more and more of a problem. And ransomware will become a bigger and bigger part of that problem. Why? Well, the simple reason is that, I mean, 1/3 of the victims of ransomware end up paying in some regard. The reason they pay is that they know that they're going to get their data back. 96% of paying victims managed to get their data back. Of the ones who didn't, 3% had some sort of issues with the software, and 1% received nothing back from them. And largely, that's a lot. A lot of them has to. Somebody's mic is open, I think. we had about 88% of the paying people. This money is mostly coming from the insurance companies. So there's a lot of money that's going through. As a matter of fact, the amount of money that's been going to these ransomware folks on the other end, the bad guys, got to such a level that it's raising the flag of the Department of the Treasury, and they're starting to issue guidance that said, hey, look, you know, if you're facilitating a payment to somebody who's on the OFAC list, that you might be violating the law. Now, I honestly have no idea how this is going to play out. This guidance is only as recent as October 1st of this year. So this will be an evolving topic, and I'm sure that the insurance companies will have something to say to them about that. But it's important to note this is a huge economy that's going going along here. Why is it booming? Well, if you want to look at this whole idea of the ransomware developer, the old profile is this highly sophisticated, individualistic person. They're targeting opportunistically. They want to make a political statement, and they're doing that. So you've kind of got this Mr. Robot kind of guy who's doing these kind of things for their own particular motivations. We need to take this image in our head and completely throw it away and realize that the person on the other end of ransomware is really Tony Soprano. I mean, we're dealing with highly sophisticated organized crime syndicates. They're motivated financially. They're the most ruthless business people that you'll ever encounter. They're targeting specifically in some of these cases, and that's why we've seen their average ransom demand go up so much, is that these crime syndicates are starting to actually target far larger organizations and go after far larger paydays, this whole big game hunting thing. They've also reached a point that they've started to evolve their tactics of how they're doing things. I mean, you look at things like business people look at things. They're going to say, well, wait a minute, we're only a third of the victims are paying. What are we going to do with the other 67%? Like, how can we get money out of them? Well, what they're doing is they're evolving. They're forming up into cartels, these smaller groups. They're teaming up. They share info. And most importantly, they're starting to exfiltrate the data. So in other words, if you get hit with ransomware, they're going to make a copy of your data before they encrypt everything. And so they have this option to extort you by threatening to release it or sell it. If you have backups and say, oh, I've got great backups, I'm just going to turn around and back up from from whatever I have, and I'm just going to fix whatever happened to let you get in. I don't have to pay you anything, just go away. Well, now they're going to say, well, if you do that, then I'm going to release all your data out on the internet, or I'm going to sell it, or I'm going to do all these other things. And there's even been a few cases where the bad guys have sort of double dipped. So in other words, you paid to unencrypt everything, got it unencrypted, and they said, oh, by the way, we have a copy and we're going to sell it unless you pay us as well. So this is one of the things that we're really seeing is the ruthlessness on the other end that's continuing to develop. The other thing with a complicated topic like ransomware, and as the economy expands, you see more specialization. You're at a point right now where the roles within the ransomware process are not just one guy who develops the ransomware and he's going to hack in there and he's going to do this, all these other things. You're seeing all of these hyper specializations. So your ransomware developers they're developing the ransomware and they're selling it. That's all they're doing. You have folks who specialize in gaining initial access to networks. You got people who specialize in getting that privilege escalation and getting those more admin rights, people who specialize in deploying the ransomware, and even people who specialize in collecting money. You're really seeing this specialization across the board. And what that is creating is that's creating a low barrier of entry. You're seeing a lot more of a ransomware as a service model, where like these GANCAB folks, you had them earlier in the year, they actually closed down shop after making quite a bit of money. And they were basically allowing folks to, look, as a service, you come in, you use our ransomware, you pay $40 just to get access to it. And guess what? You have full access, and we'll just split the ransom with you, and we'll even help you collect it. So you're seeing this low barrier of entry, and making even more so. So you would be sitting here, if you're a bad guy, say, okay, well, all I have to do is figure out how to get into a network, and then, hey, I can deploy ransomware, I can do this. Well, like I was saying, there's people who specialize in getting initial access, and this is an example of that. This is from a forum. They're selling access to servers over RDP, and you can see that the cost of gaining access to a server is about $20. So just even that, as you break through it, if you think about it, this barrier of entry, if you decided to go rogue today, and you bought, your ransomware license, and you bought your, your initial access to a network, you might be out $50-$60 to start. It's a very low barrier of entry. So you're seeing this influx of these new, this new profile filling out sort of the bottom area as the cartels have moved up into hunting bigger game. You're seeing some of the smaller game basically getting hunted by these guys, just these unsophisticated, individualistic guys that are just putting together these opportunistic attacks, and they're going out, they're buying access, they're using ransomware as a service, and they're doing that. This massive economy, again, it continues to grow and grow and grow. And that's the thought I want really to leave you with, is just think about the guys on the other end. This is a huge, huge business to a lot of people, and it will only continue to grow and get bigger. So with that, I want to pass things off to Sherry to talk a little bit more about her experience being sort of on the other end of an incident like this.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see the screen?
We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, great. So my name is Sherry Willis, and I'm the Executive Director of Educational Technology at College of the Desert. And I'm here today because COD has lived through a ransomware attack recently. So this is what started it off. 6:57 on August 23rd, Sunday morning, I got a text from our Director of Security with this picture: your files are encrypted. So what comes to mind? Is this real? Did someone click on a link they shouldn't have? Is it just this computer? Well, unfortunately, it didn't take us very long to find out that we were actually hit with a ransomware attack the day before our fall flex activities began. What we found out later is that we had been hit with 2 different threat attackers, both from IPs in Romania. Files were encrypted 3 different ways, and it was a variant of the dharma virus. And it attacked everything. It encrypted our email server, our web server, our emergency notification system, all of our backups, and even our individual computer workstations. After a few weeks of research, we found that the way that the attackers were able to get into our system was we were testing a server for a lab environment using VDI over RDP. The port was open to public for testing, and the attackers were able to acquire a domain admin account credential. Then they found our domain controller, which gave them access to our entire system. So what happened? Fortunately, the next week was our flex activities, and we could still use the Vision Resource Center because we were authenticating through Azure. We also had Canvas authenticating through Azure, so we could stay up and running for our fall classes, which started on the 31st. However, just about everything else was down. Colleague was not damaged in that no one was able to get to our Unidata database and encrypt the data, but we couldn't use it unless you were on site because the web components were down. The mobile app was up and running, but we couldn't access it for any ads or drops. We were able to get to our payroll accounting system because the county provided us an alternate way to get to the system that was not on our premise. Our email was down for about 1 week, so think about that. The only way we could communicate was acquiring personal email addresses. We used an alternate system login to get to Rave, our emergency notification system, so we could at least get information out to faculty, staff, and students. But we found that the list and groups that we had created were outdated, so we could not reach everybody. Jabber, which we had been using to make phone calls, was down. So we had to use personal cell phone numbers and Zoom meetings. Our web pages were down. So we created a 1-page temporary site where we provided critical student information. It was really an effort to start recovery. We did not know where to start. This was Sunday morning. Who do you get a hold of? We were able to track down the personal cell number of Barney Gomez, who was kind enough to call me back, get Stephen Heath on the line, and we started doing some analysis of where we were and what we needed to do next. COD was very fortunate in that we have cybersecurity insurance, and a representative helped set us up with a response team within hours that included our forensics team and legal counsel. So by 2:15 on Sunday, we had a team together that was looking at where we were and what our next steps were. This included negotiating for ransom with 2 threat actors. And as noted earlier, decryption tools do not work 100%. We learned a lot of new terminology. We learned about threat actors, ransom, proof of life, Bitcoin. We paid 3 different times, and we were asked to pay a 4th time so that they would not sell data that we didn't think we needed to other people. As of today, about 2 months later, we're mostly back to where we were in August. All of our servers that were older than 2012 have been replaced and updated. All our servers are patched to current levels. We restricted our firewall traffic to US only, and we've gradually opened that up as we've installed additional monitoring and logging. We've replaced our RDP strategy with VPN over RDP, and we're getting ready to implement 2-factor authentication also. We've installed endpoint detection and reporting on all of our production servers and individual computers. We're using Sentinel-1 from Kivu, which includes 24/7 real-time monitoring. And we've worked with the CCC Tech Center to enable Tenable Security Scanner. So what's next? We plan to continue to schedule security audits with the State Chancellor's Office. Part of our service with Kivu and their managed service is to give us weekly security notifications of things that they see on the horizon and what we can do to mitigate it. We're looking at changing our organization with IT a little bit to include some type of security engineer technician position. That is someone who can dedicate 100% of their time to monitoring security. We need to improve our internal communication, checks and balances, so we don't leave things out on our network that are unprotected. We want to consider more cloud-based services. We've modified our backup strategies, and we will be using multi-factor authentication, including strong passwords. I wish I could say there's one thing that we found that would have prevented this, but it really wasn't anything we didn't know or weren't aware of. We were just a little careless and we got stung. It's truly been a living nightmare to get through this. And again, after 2 months, we feel like we're sort of back in business. We feel we're stronger in that we have more layers of security. We're more aware of things to watch for. But it's a chapter that I did not want to write in my IT career. And unfortunately, we had to live through it. But we did live through it. And like I said, we're pretty much back up and running.
Thank you, Sherry. Appreciate you taking the time to talk us through that and give us a little idea on that. And now I think we'd like to kick to Amir, who can talk a little bit more about the strategies for preventing this kind of situation from happening.
All right. You guys can hear me? Yeah. Okay. You can view my presentation. It looks okay.
Yep, looks great.
Yeah, we can see everything.
All right, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining and taking the time to discuss this very important issue. Thank you, Stefan and Bernie and Sherry for sharing your experience and knowledge. And today, my focus is going to be predominantly predominantly focused on the ransomware flow and the best practices that are applicable to all the colleges and how we can benefit from it. What are the ransomware? We already know. How does an organization get targeted by ransomware? It's important to understand the flow of the information, what transpires, and what are the holes that bad actors look for, and then you can potentially, close down those loopholes. So attackers often install ransomware onto a system through a phishing email. This email is either contained in a malicious attachment or a hyperlink that redirects a user to an infected website where the malware is installed onto the user system without their knowledge. The phishing emails is intended for a ransomware attack. Usually contains a Microsoft document that is malicious with malicious macros. When the user opens this file, the malicious macro is enabled. The macro runs through a script which downloads the malware, and the file is installed to the victim's computer and scans for files on the system, eventually encrypting everything there is. So it happens in two forms. Basically, if you ransomware is installed through website is commonly referred to as a drive-by malware, right? So the infected website are known as water holing. These are designed to attract as much traffic as possible. So the two ways that a ransomware can propagate is manual propagation and automated propagation. So the manual propagation requires a track actor having access to environment with administrative level privileges. Once this is achieved, they can run the file encryptor script on your system. They can also commonly deploy, using Windows batches or Microsoft group policy objects or vulnerable software onto the victim system. The automated propagation, there's the certification or Windows token extraction from the file system or the RAM, utilizing the framework, such as WMI, SMB, which is the communication of the servers and message blocks, PS exec, way to connect with SMB to another machine to tie up the executable payloads. So MPESH vulnerability leading, it also can lead to vulnerable systems. So if you go through the flow, if you look at the malicious software from a download, infection originates, as I mentioned, from phishing email through an embedded on the web page or water holing. Once that happens, the attack gets armed depending on the BIOS or the firmware in your system is bypassed, and more exploits are basically installed in the background. The next phase for the ransomware is to spread this infection. Malware begins to scan for internal system networks and other ingress points to steal credentials and create more vectors for lateral movement across the network. So basically what we're trying to do is looking for a foothold, discovery, and looking at file share accounts and stuff like that. To be able to exploit those. Malware attacks, once malware deploys its final attack payloads across the network, payload will destroy the files from the network, leaving only encrypted files, and infected programs can perpetually reactive payload. So they're recurring perpetually. Once all this happens, the attacks become successful. Files on the systems are encrypted with the AES or other encryption, and the victims are asked for ransom payment by usually Bitcoin. And after the payment is made, encryption keys are to be provided by the supposedly by a threat actor. Sometimes they don't. So keep in mind. So all right. So the attack vectors. How does this happen? Small and medium-sized companies are being targeted by, utilizing RDP as an entry point. So a lot of colleges can be categorized as small, medium-sized businesses, that can be a common target for RDP. Large organizations are more likely to be targeted for phishing as opposed to RDP. Since the coronavirus, issues been going on, RDP and VPN use has been skyrocketed, which is adding to the RDP attacks and phishing attacks. The RDP use is 41% up, and VPN use is 33% up. So that adds to overall attack vectors. So looking at the market share as a Q1. Recently, Sodino Kiwi shares the 15%. So these are the types of ransomware that you would commonly see. There, the different bodies of ransomware or families of ransomware, you can say. So Sodino Kiwi is currently number 1 according to Coveware research. So how does Sodino Kiwi works? So as Stefan alluded a little bit, Sodino Kiwi was created by Grand Grab ransomware family, which was retired, early in summer 2019. It usually depends on phishing email or website containing some sort of a link to a zip file. The file containing malicious JavaScript code is spread, and then initially, and the access involves exploitation of Oracle WebLogic. Oracle WebLogic is application, usually commonly application server, could be vulnerable. And a lot of colleges use that as a in a SIS system. So this can also be a deserialization attack where Java code is basically somehow manipulated to allow extra command for an attack. So if you have certain patches, it's also this Sodino Kiwi also looks for certain patches. If a patch is installed, this is not going to proceed. It looks for a 32, 64-bit shellcode depending on the on the system architecture. This also elevates privilege via Windows, ALPC. Where an attacker who successfully exploited this vulnerability could run, some sort of arbitrary code on the local system, and that code, and then he can install programs, delete, change, and create new accounts with full rights. So to exploit this vulnerability, the attacker would first need to log onto the system, and and then he can craft application that can exploit search vulnerability. So and also other signs of compromise for Sodino Kiwi is you will have a ransomware node that will appear on your desktop. Open in the notepad. Desktop will have a blue background. Wallpaper will be changed. Target files types are JPEG, RAW, TIFF, and stuff like that. So this is an example of the ransomware note, basically, which it goes into after the victim opens the malicious zip file, Sodino Kiwi runs in the background and changes the wallpaper to blue, which is this ransomware node. The node explains that the system has been encrypted and instructions are provided to unlock files. This file is going to be specified website and copy the provided key. So it gives some instructions to do what next. So these are the the encrypted files. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of them. And then you go into the payment page. So the payment page is basically the victim is provided the link to this page in the ransomware note. They have to enter the generic key in the note to access the paywall. Once they perform the required steps to make the payment, the encryption keys are intended to be available to the victim. So it's just that they go through a steps on how to exploit you. And as just adding to what Mr. Stefan said, these bad actors trying to look for other bad actors for ransomware as a service, looking for weak networks to install these malicious softwares, and then so they both can make money. So this is what they're doing. Another example of ransomware I want to discuss is the dharma, which exploits leaked or weak Windows 80 credentials, open RDP protocol, port 3389, and phishing emails and malicious file attachments. Signs of compromise, if you go deeper, would be .crisis, .dharma. Those are known file extension. There's a lot of them, so you can keep an eye on these things. They also have some known file hashes that you can review and observe. Similar to Sodi New Kiwi, ransomware nodes are README texts, how to decrypt your data, README to restore your file, decrypt instruction, files encrypted, all those similar type of steps. So recently, according to Coveware, in Q2 data, RDP compromises are on the rise, as you can see in the blue line, and the second in coming is email phishing. So these RDP is a big issue currently, especially for community colleges. So why RDPs? What is RDP and why is this popular attack vector? So because it's just generally is easy to use. It's remote desktop that people like to use, and it was created by Microsoft in the 90s, enable user to access a computer from another machine location. So if it's left open in the internet, a hacker can gain access directly to the remote server, and attackers can often scan port 3389. And so how do attacker breach an organization through RDP? So this basically occurs when an attacker will run a port scan using Shodan and looking for an open TCP port 3389, and then brute force the RDP credentials. And then once the leaked credentials, and also the leaked credentials can be purchased through a website, openly, they are available in the marketplace. The use of phishing to gain access inside an organization, once the attacker can, brute force internal RDP access through compromised devices. So they can do a number of things. So what happens after the attacker gains access through RDP? The attacker will use tools such as Mimikatz to harvest your Windows 80 username and passwords, and they will collect as much as they can. With an administrator account, the threat vector will elevate these privileges within the domain to exploit it. Once within the network, attack will map out the topography of the network and try to move laterally. So, having said that, is just a brief explaining what these things are, how these things happen. What are the best practices? What do we have for you to discuss that you can take and put into practice to minimize ransomware damage? Foremost, enforce a strong password, Windows 80 password, and administration policy. This will make the cracking of obtain hashes password very difficult. And this will prevent direct access to campus resources should an attacker gain access to your network. So it will minimize the risk. And domain accounts should be restricted and should not be used to administer low-level systems. So let's keep an eye on that as part of make a policy. Password theft. As I mentioned, once hashed, cracking tools can be used to pre-compile list of passwords, dictionary words, brute force attack, rule attack. So the most important, I think, is the password length. So the length, the shorter the length, is easier for time to crack, right? So if your password length is between 4 and 6, it will take you 1 second to crack that password. And if if you're 10 character loan, it would take 19 hours. So once you get into the green zone, whereas 13 character loan, it will be 39.3 years. Hopefully we won't be working by then at any place. So it does, shorter passwords are, a huge risk. So implement policies that user are not able to create short, passwords. Windows group policies, are a very efficient way to also restrict, security issues. Group policy can be used to create security policy across a Windows network. And we work with Sherry and her team to go through the best practices, and constantly work with colleges. We can assist you developing, group policies and various security matters. We will also be doing an in-depth analysis and presentation and steps on this group policy in future in our winter workshop. Please join that, and we will give you steps and directions on those. Restrict RDP access through a campus network only. So access to the campus, that is the Windows machine, should only be done within the network, campus network. Outside access should only be allowed through VPN connection to your campus network. And you need to monitor if you're using RDP, RDP systems is very, very important. Then other recommendation we'd give is require two-factor authentication to access campus services. So this should be configured when using VPN access. The RDP gateways can be configured to integrate with your campus instance of Duo or Google Authenticator or whatever two-factor mechanism that you have in place and you want to utilize. That's a very important tool to as a defense tool that you can use. Only provide Windows RDP access to users who require it. So all the Windows AD administrator can log in via remote desktop by default. So default settings should be changed. Remote access for admin accounts should be limited to those who are strictly requiring it. If you require remote desktop, if it's not necessary for system administrator, you should remove all the administrative level access through RDP and restrict it to a user account only. And if the system administrator require RDP access, please only allow connection via VPN or two-factor as discussed previously. So this is another defense mechanism that you can do. Enable network level authentication. So require end user to authenticate themselves before establishing a session with the server hosting RDP services. So make sure if RDP is required, then they should be enabled at minimum. Other generic cyber hygiene to prevent against attacks are, in summary, are basically prevent phishing and disable macros in Microsoft Document, enforce strong password policy and require 2FA with VPN for login, consistently monitor network traffic, and monitor Windows events, backup assets often, patch system ASAP, implement best RDP security as discussed. How do you prevent phishing? Your staff should be trained to identify phishing emails and avoid download attachments or clicking hyperlink if the source seems to be untrustworthy or something not right about that. You need to keep an eye on those. Always keep in mind, does this email relate to my work or not? So always think about that. And be wary of email that imply urgency regarding passwords or accounts. So some email says change password immediately, or your mailbox is out of space, or there was a problem with your credit card information, or we have migrated to a new things. So these are some red flags that you need to be aware of. if you have certain sites that doesn't have the lock on, which means you have the lock indicates the website has a SSL cert. This verify, the traffic is encrypted, or they, or HTTPS and stuff like that. So if you don't have a lock, that means there's something not right about this. And sometimes they have sites, is now verified by Google, or they have some Amazon with 2 N's, or your website is directed to a Russia. So that means there's something not right about. So you have to be careful about those things. Disabling macros, as I mentioned, although this automates Office task, this can abuse to perform exploit on the system. So this should be strongly restricted in a manner, and be very careful when you use this. Again, enforce strong password policy with 2FA for login, and make this will make your Windows 80 account more difficult for attackers to exploit. Backup assets as often possible, especially the critical ones. It's recommended to keep a copy of backup in the cloud, or some other strategy. On-premise backups can be infected, as well as Stefan mentioned, on ongoing attacks. So consistently monitor traffic is very important. Discovering unusual traffic on your network can lead to an early detection of ransomware. If you monitor net flow or packet analysis, you can determine if certain suspicious traffic needs to be shut down or not. Monitor Windows events with SIM tool, or perform log correlation. If you have some sort of logging strategy, please utilize that. If not, we do have a service available from Splunk. We use a Splunk solution. So if you're interested, reach out to us. We can provide you ingest your data on that. The latest software updates, please patch those systems on a regular basis, and address known vulnerabilities, and run a scan on your network to detect the vulnerabilities and find what host needs to be patched. And we also have Tenable, as Sherry mentioned. You need to scan those on a regular basis. If you're not onboarded with our Tenable service, please let us know. We can onboard you. What do you do if your system is infected? Some high-level recommendation. Although it's not unusual, although it's usual to shut down an infected asset, the best action is to keep it turned on in an isolated system for your network. This is to dump RAM memory for analysis. There may be a chance of reaching the cryptographic keys in the RAM memory. This also will help you collect and protect evidence and ransomware encryption keys. So, it's something to be aware of. Phishing testing, when we do penetration test, we also can do some sort of campaign to test security training and effectiveness of your environment. If you require, when we do pen test in your environment, we can also do this. So we have done successfully pen test for many places, many colleges. And we found some of the highlights that I want to share with you are in the areas of critical unpatched system, Windows servers, remote code execution vulnerabilities, WebLogic server, deserialization attacks. So we have successfly exploited these during our pen test. So weak network configuration, LLNMR, which is enabled, lets you collect network hashes. WFAT configuration, which is basically outbound proxy misconfiguration, lets you steal credentials. Unpatched RDP, open to the internet. Open file shares with weak controls, weak passwords. Too many domain admins in a high-risk system, domain admins being used inappropriately. All those things we have seen. Services that we, penetration testing is very critical. If you do that, that can reduce impact of successful phishing attack, find vulnerabilities, misconfiguration in your network, and reduce access and damage to ransomware attack, right? And the Tenable service we offer can also help you discover vulnerability with host on your network and take action immediately. Logging monitoring system is critical of detecting infection, and we also have a service on that. So we can provide you if you're interested in that. We also have the regular security workshop, meetings, advisory, white papers. As a matter of fact, also create a white paper for on this topic, which will be available or is already available, I think, through our Security Center website. If you have any questions, concern, let me know. With this, I'm going to pass the ball back to our dear friend, Mr. Stefan.
Thank you very much, Amir. Appreciate all the information you're able to share with us there. I believe at this point we have some time for Q&A. Sandoval is going to open it up so that people can send messages in the chat, and I'll be happy to read them, and we can direct them to Barney, Amir, Sherry, or myself as appropriate.
Chat is open. Thanks, Stefan.
You bet. Yes, this is recorded, Sandoval. I don't believe, I know exactly how it's going to be available to be distributed, but if you could let us know on that, that would be great.
Yeah, hello everyone. This session is being recorded and captioned. We will be sending out a link to the recording in the next day or two as it becomes available. We will also likely send PowerPoints, and we will also have a link to the white paper that Amir referred to. So good package coming in that one. Thanks.
Perfect. Let's see, they've got a link from Craig on some great set of preventions and checklists that he shared in the chat. I encourage everyone to look at that. That's a great guide.
Hopefully it's not a malicious link.
And then we also have a question from Eric. Sherry, you said that you changed backups. How so? What was the strategy around that?
Matt, are you on with us? Could you help me with that question? Matt?
Sorry, Sherry, he may be restricted
Okay.
in terms of audio. Who is it, please?
Matt Todd.
Okay, I will take a look.
Okay, thank you.
And while we're unmuting him, we've got a few other things talking about Citrix RDP, same vulnerability as Microsoft. I'm not exactly sure on that one exactly what you're asking there.
You can follow the best RDP back practices, similar to the best practices in RDP would apply to that too. So
okay, perfect. And
can
yes,
we unmute Matt?
There you go, Matt. I think you should be good. You can try.
Sorry, I'm still looking for him. Let's see. I've got 220 people.
He's waving his hand.
There he is. Thank you for doing that, Matthew. Let me see if I can.
There we go.
Perfect.
Talking you here. All right.
So the question was about the backups. Basically, first of all, I just want to start off by saying I recently joined COD here with Sherry. So I thought that this was trial by fire. Here, welcome to COD. Here's a ransomware attack. This was something I haven't been a part of throughout. I've been working in the IT industry for over 20 years, and this was the first time I've seen it this bad as far as what a ransomware is able to do. It pretty much shut down our operations. Luckily, due to COVID, we didn't have any faculty or staff or students on site, so we were able to keep operations up because most of our services provided for students were in the cloud or off-site. But we had to work around the clock to make sure to get everything back up and running. And as Sherry said, we're just now getting getting everything back up and running the way it was before this happened. But we did learn a lot of things. And coming on board, there was a lot of questions as far as the backups and stuff. And just to reiterate, as IT people, we get so used to doing it a certain way, and it gets so big that sometimes we forget to go back and check the things that we know we have to check. We're either just too busy or we don't have the time to do it. So one of those things for us was definitely the backups. We had had most of our backups living kind of on the same system that some of our production stuff was on, and that production stuff got hit. It opened the door to those backups, and because of that, we weren't able to bring up those systems quite as quickly as we wanted to. And just again, once they had access to the domain controller and they kind of knew where they were going, it was really remarkable how fast it happened. And in order to get the information back, just the whole process of all this, and just learning a lot from it, and seeing where our weaknesses were, our vulnerabilities were. Because of that, now I think we're stronger because of it. But we definitely learned a lesson. Definitely learned a lesson with everything that happened.
Great, thank you, Matt. I see one other question in here for Sherry about the Bitcoin payments and everything like that. How did you figure out which one to pay the ransom?
We worked with our forensic team who did the negotiations for us. And the value of Bitcoin changes by the hour. So you have to sort of lock in a rate, put it in a Bitcoin wallet. We had to go through our carrier for them to approve that we could pay the Bitcoin. They did look to see if the people we were paying the money to was on any type of watch list. So the FBI was involved as well. So that's where our insurance and our forensics team helped us.
Perfect. There's another, quite a few questions coming in here. It looks like there was one from Craig about how they got the credentials. This would be more for the forensics. This might be Matt. You might know the answer to this. Did they do like a Mimikatz escalation or something like that? Was that what they used?
So yeah, somehow they got access to a domain admin credential. Again, coming on board, one of the things I noticed in your PowerPoint earlier on, it said domain admin credentials should only be used for a few specific people. Well, the previous management here kind of just left that open to, instead of making different group policies, he assigned certain people domain admin rights. And unfortunately, one of those accounts was compromised, and that's kind of how they were able to get around the system.
Were the network switches and firewalls affected? Was any of the hardware?
Negative. The routers and switches were not affected. Majority of the stuff that was impacted was data.
And then I got one other one regarding the insurance. Was there like a special insurance rider added for the college on that, or was that just part of the insurance that you had?
It's available through the Southwest, in some sort of consortium. It's currently handled through Chubb, and it is separate insurance. And our insurance was up to $3 million per incident, but that is something separate that we added a few years ago.
Perfect. I think I've got most of them. Oh, it says this one that from Paul about it was found in removed with BART PE and looked in the prefetch folder. Are you familiar with those previous ones, and the troubleshooting step is still valid today? I think for that, I would say that largely things keep constantly changing. We, I can say as part of when we were working with Sherry and we're having those conversations that there was a lot of different things, tried and true things that we had found to try and identify and possibly get at some of those things to remove them, and it really wasn't that successful. So the bad guys are constantly evolving their tactics.
There's a question about the AD, green AD, if some.
Oh, yeah.
Sherry, I guess.
where was, oh, did you deploy a new Active Directory, just a completely green Active Directory?
So we went through and audited all of our Active Directory and changed the group policies for people, and also re-implemented stronger password protection, changing passwords and all that stuff as well.
What endpoint security were you using?
We had a WebRoot on most of our devices, but once they got in, they were able to get around that, so it didn't detect it.
So what we're using right now is Sentinel-1 that was provided by Kivu. And we've purchased that service through June of next year, so we can evaluate what we might need. The advantage to us right now is it does provide 24/7 monitoring. So if there's any suspicious activity, any large volumes of data being transferred in or out, they will isolate the system for us, take it off the network, and notify us within 30 minutes. And they give us $1 million warranty. So if something happens, you know, they're pretty sure that their software is going to prevent it from doing damage to our system.
I see another question.
You know, most of the this endpoint device, some ransomware can sometimes easily bypass them, and you know, so you need to have a data-centric approach in security, where you need to protect the data. So because they're attacking the data, the ultimate goal is to get it. You know, so you want to be able to protect against you know, some sort of attack. So we're going to talk about this further in future because we're doing some research on that, and we may have some more you know, relevant information to share with our community soon. So.
I think we're getting really close to time. I'll probably grab one more question, then I want to give Barney a chance to have the last word. Any of the rest of you who still have questions, we can try and get to them and respond to you as we can. I did see a question about list of tools for decryption and that sort of thing, like the GANCAB utility. You know, there are some out there that you can find. I think the biggest issue that you'll find with them is that things are constantly changing. You might get lucky and find one that works, but just the problem with the strains of ransomware are changing so quickly. Unless somebody actually fully cracks the software, it's usually fairly hard to get something that's actually going to be able to decrypt for you. With that, again, I wanted to echo in the comments, there was a thank you to Sherry for you guys being willing to talk about this. This is very helpful, I know, for everyone else, and we greatly appreciate it. So Barney, I will give you the final word as we wrap up today.
I got 2 minutes. Wow, great job, great presentation. Amir, Stefan, Matt, and Sherry. Sherry, thank you to you and your team for sharing the information with us. I think it was extremely insightful on the information. You know, the information that Amir went over and what Stefan went over, very, very valuable information that we all, you know, could use and have. We will share this information out. You know, again, I have to admit, I have never gone through a ransomware process in the 30 years I've been doing IT. So just to hear you guys talk about it, you and Matt, I was like cringing over here on my end. It's like, wow, I'm glad I have never have to gone through that. And I hope I don't ever have to. And I hope you folks do not ever have to again. So I hope that this was extremely helpful to everybody involved in providing the insight. I know that there are various things going on. You know, we have budget problems, we have staffing shortages. So whatever we can do to help, we are here to help. The Chancellor's Office and the Tech Center in collaboration are here for you folks to basically do what we can possibly do for you to help mitigate and, you know, provide insight and training and run the penetration testing. So I want to thank everybody for all the time and effort that was put into this, especially you people taking the time out to come in and listen to this today. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon. And please, let's all work together to keep mitigating these things and to bring awareness to the system so that we don't encounter this and nobody has to encounter what Sherry and her folks had to ever encounter. So thank you again, everybody. That's it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.